Hello everyone, and welcome to this ALPS webinar on judgment grades. My name is Sue, and I am going to be with you for the next 45 minutes or so. And we're going to look at how you might use Connect Interactive to get the most out of your current predicament and the judgment grading that you're having to do before the end of May, or as at a point when you're told that's the deadline. So I'm going to take you through various aspects of Connect Interactive today. I'm going to show you some of the new features that we released last week, and basically just talk you through some of the scenarios that you might want to consider whilst looking at judgment grade determination, and then the quality assurance process that I'm sure you're all working up to that goes alongside that judgment grading. Just that link down there is to a support website, but I'm going to come back to all of that when I go into Connect in a moment. So bear with me on that one. Okay, so today, there's two of us here today. I'm presenting, and then my colleague John Phillip, who some of you may know, is on the other end of a keyboard and ready to answer your questions. So if you do have any, excuse me, any questions, then please do pop them in the panel. And John will do his best to answer those, and pretty much been managing to get through all of that in the webinar. Okay, so a second sort of thing is the data webinars. If you're new to us and you are unsure about how to start submitting data, then please do book onto one of the data webinars accompanying this one. We've got a couple that are going back onto the website today for next week, and they'll be Tuesday and Friday next week. So if they're not there at the moment, they will reappear. So please do click into that. In the meantime, there is a recording of one on the training hub of the website. Okay, so bear with us and we'll get those on today so that your data submitters can book onto one of those. We've also got a methodology one. You don't need to pop it in the question bar, sorry about that, but we have got one running. I think it's tomorrow. I'm running it tomorrow on methodology, so please do let us know if you want to book onto that. You can just book onto it via the website. Now, just for clarity on what I'm talking about today, the judgment grades are those that you are being asked to submit to the exam boards alongside the ranking. And the exam boards are obviously now calling those centre assessed grades. So your centre assessed grades is what we're referring to when we're talking about judgment grades. And by calculated grades, if I mention those, then those are the ones that you will get back as the grades from the exam boards in results day, actually, that should say, which has obviously been clarified as being the same 2 days as always. Okay, so for this webinar, I'm going to show you quite a few different grade points, and by a grade point I mean a data submission into Connect Interactive. If you are new to Connect, then you will need to obviously populate it with some of the data. What I'd recommend is getting your current students in there, putting a monitoring point in as a starting point for you to determine your final submission judgment grades, and then up to you after that, really. I'm going to show you a few grade points, and you might want to replicate these, but might recommend that you put last year's summer exam results in, so that you can just do a comparison back, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that when I go into Connect. So talking about Connect, I am now going to go there. Okay, so if I just minimize that for a moment and then pop into Connect, this is your Connect home screen. Now, what I'm not going to do today is I'm not going to go through all of the methodology and the sort of all of the features of Connect. There are additional bits of support that you can access these things, but I'm going to assume some knowledge today, and we're just going to talk about the quality assurance of judgment grades and not the not the sort of methodology bit of it. But if you are looking for support, that link that I was telling you about, we've put a bar in at the top of the Connect screen, and if you click on that, it will take you to a web page that is basically full of step-by-step guide to how you might get started. So there's your input of data, bit of videos, some support packages. Click on the webinar there. And then a bits and bobs, so some blogs written by John and myself, and some videos here that you might find supplement this webinar with some short videos, and they are short, promise you, on the specific features, so the what if tool, for example, of Connect Interactive. If I keep scrolling down, I've got some methodology bits and bobs there. As I say, there's a webinar that goes with that, which we're running tomorrow, and then so on. And some of this material will become of more relevance to you if you stay with us into next year and you want to start looking at the value added from your calculated grades, or those that are published by the exam boards, and looking at how you might get the most out of those from September onwards. Okay, and then the one bit I'd point out here is the Connect Interactive workbook, perhaps, where you might want to start. If you're more of a person who wants to follow this on paper, then download that, and it will take you through Connect Interactive and how to get the most out of it. Righto, back to Connect. So you might have noticed, if you've been with us for a while, that last week the home screen slightly changed in that a big orange box appeared, which tells you what you're going to focus on. So what your grade point is actually focused on and looking at in terms of your year group. Now, we did release some new features, and if you want to know more about how to use the grade point, for example, then please do go onto our website, a homepage of the website, and it's got some short videos that show you these features working in isolation from the rest of the package. So I'm just going to plow on today and make sure you visit that homepage and the tiles there if you need some extra help. So I'm going to look at year 13 today. Basically, the same principles apply regardless of the key stage or the qualification that you are interested in. And let me just say that for those of you who are using ALPS and Connect Interactive at Key Stage 5, we have opened it out for free to Key Stage 4 as well, or vice versa, but usually is that way round. So do please, if it's of use to you, do get some data into your year 11s as well, and use it. Please do use it to make the most of your judgment, to get the most out of your quality assurance of judgment grades. Righto, so I'm going to look at year 13. So I am going to start in the subject area. I'm going to pop in there. Now, what have I got? I've got 4 in-year grade points for my current year 13. So MP1 was taken around October time. I did some mocks in January, and this is the raw grades. Then I asked my teachers in January for a prediction, and that's those. And then I've put a judgment grade in, which is my latest sort of monitoring point, or my latest draft from my teachers on what they will be submitting as draft 1, what they're proposing to submit as the grade for each student. Okay, so you can select any 4 you want, but I'm just taking that as a start point. And as I said at the beginning, we're just going to talk through some scenarios of what you might want to focus on. This is not an exhaustive list. I'm just giving you some pinpoints, some pointers today as to where you might go. Okay. Right, so just for those of you very, very quickly who are new to us, when looking at that view, you are looking at, oh, got a blip there, don't know why. There we go. When looking at that view, just to say that if you are red for a subject or any indicator, that means that your progress is married against the top 25% of schools nationally, and it is all mapped against a national database. The middle 50% is graded 4 to 6, so that's black, 4, 5, 6. And then what you don't really want to see under normal circumstances is grades 7, 8, 9, which are blue. So basically, red's hot, top 25%, and blue's bottom 25%, so not. And that all works out onto a thermometer like this, and the Alps thermometer sitting in the middle with your grading as shown. Okay, so that's just a quick context for those of you who are new to us. Okay, so we're going to have a look at some of these subjects now and just look at some questions that might arise from it. And I'm going to start with chemistry. So I'm going to start with A-level chemistry, and I've got some monitoring points that started off the year terribly positively. Top 10% progress is a grade 2, and then dipped a bit in the mocks, which you potentially expect. You'd expect them to do less well in the mocks, possibly. And then the prediction was a grade 3 in January. Now, what my chemists are basically telling me is that all of a sudden we've dropped those 37 chemists from a grade sort of 2, 3 bouncing along to a 5. So I've kind of got a few questions for my chemistry department on that, perceived drop in progress of students. So I want to look at them individually. So we click on chemistry and we pop in there. Now I'm going to go, there's some information on this page which you may or may not want to look at this stage, but I'm going to go straight to the student tab. Okay, and here are all my chemists, and I'm going to sort that by prior attainment. I'm going to bring the highest GCSE prior attainers to the top. I do have more than one chemistry teaching set, and let me say at this point that you can do this, this whole of the rest of this exercise you can do by subject area or by teaching set. Okay, so you take your pick as to who you are and what your role is and what you want to see. So what I'm looking at here is my high prior attaining young people from GCSE who have all got sort of targets or minimum expected grade or personalized targets of AA star. That is the judgment grade that is being submitted or being proposed. So I can immediately see that I am a little bit concerned probably about the lack of A stars, as in 0, and A's across that group of students. So what I'd want to do is have a chat to the chemistry teacher or chemistry lead and just ask some questions. How come they're not getting that AA star? And the next question I might ask is, what were they getting across the year? Now, we last week released this trends tab. So let me click in here, because the trend tab is designed to help you see the year picture in a lot more detail. So we decided to build this tab in because it would help you right now. It was one of these features that we were going to build into Connect anyway, but we just sped it up because we felt it would be really, really powerful for you right at this moment in time. So I'm sure I'm right on that it is powerful. So let me just sort, and it's a brand new table format. So to sort, just click in the column header, and I'm bringing my highest prior attainers to the top again. I've got a bit of a trend line, and pretty much for those top ones, they're all headed down the way, as you can see. And the other powerful column is this grade difference column. So what that's doing is it's comparing the main grade point, which is this final one here, with whichever one you have selected from this drop down. So at the moment, it's looking at the January predict to judgment predict, in effect. And you can see the amount of blue. So of all those top students, they've basically dropped a grade since January. So have the chemistry department done some additional assessments over that time that's led them to that conclusion? Or is it just them hedging their bets? Or is it them being slightly pessimistic? Who knows? But there's just questions there that you can talk to your chemists about and actually say, is that a fair and robust grade for each of those individual students? And I really hope that the addition of this table gives you the power to look back really quickly across that group of students to just see what their trends look like across that time. You can change that difference column to be married against whichever other grade point you've got there. So if I chose mocks, I can see the grid difference between the judgment and the mock, and etc, etc, etc. I'm going to go back to MP2. Now then, one of the other most powerful things about this table is that you'll see the big X download there, so you can export it to Excel. Now, before I do that, I'm going to actually sort by judgment grade. Okay, so let's say I've had all the conversations and I am happy that this is a reliable and just set of judgment grades for this chemistry group. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort by my judgment grade and order. Okay, so they're now in order of grade. And I'm now going to export to Excel that view. Okay, so here we go. She's coming up. So let me just move that out of the way. Right, so what you're hopefully seeing, if I just reduce the size a little bit, what you're hopefully seeing now is exactly what you saw in Connect, but look at they're all graded, sorry, they're all ranked by their outcome grade. Remember, you can do this at GCSE as well. And then what I would suggest that you start then working with your staff on is putting in a rank column. And obviously then you can start to 1, 2, 3, etc. And you can start to then look at the different rankings within the grades and start moving some of those around, so that you've got the ranking order within each grade boundary. You've got the ranking order the way that you feel it should be. Really hope that that's a powerful bit of analysis that will help you get that ranking sorted, and it will also mean that you can hopefully use this kind of spreadsheet to share across staff. So for example, in a big subject like English GCSE, and start getting, you know, staff talking to each other about how they dovetail their sets together, or the students who are on different grades together into that ranking picture. Okay, so oops, where's my, here we go. Okay, so really hope that that helps you. There's other things that you can do with that table. You can hide columns by clicking on there. You can move columns around if you want to, like just by doing that. But effectively, I think the most powerful thing is that kind of idea there. Okay. Okay, so if I just go back to the subject area, then I'm going to choose a second subject, and I'm going to deliberately choose English literature. And the reason for that is because it's been looking blue, blue, blue across the year 13. And so at this stage, what I'd like to say is that, you know, we would advocate being honest. And if that's actually what you think the English department look like, then that's what they look like, and that's what you're making that honest approach with grading your students within that subject area. But let's have a look at it. So let's go into English, and again, I'm going to go straight to trends this time. Okay, so there are my English students. And again, if I just sort by high prior attainment, and just I'm just showing you some of the different capabilities of this table. I'm just going to take a few grade points out there so that we can see that there's their judgment grade here, and you can see their MEG there, that actually it's this middle block of students who are potentially underperforming. And so my question would be of the English staff, is that fair? You know, is that actually what you'd expect from those students in the middle there, to be having that kind of profile? If we look at student 114, and I'm going to click on this to show you the next new feature that we released last week. So let's just click on 114 and bring her tab up. So you can see we've made some changes to the student tab in that we've given you again that trend so that you don't have to click back through tabs, which is what you were having to do up to the release point of this. So we can see for this student, she's doing 3 subjects, and her latest set of judgment grades, so what we're proposing is DBA, the D being in that English literature. And in actual fact, last monitoring point, which is MP2, was CBC. So you can see what's happened to her between the 2 points. She's dropped in English, but has actually increased by 2 grades in sociology. So the chances in terms of her chances of let's say accessing a university course or post-16 a course might be affected by that, are probably going to be affected by that. And so again, it's just another avenue to make sure that you unturn every stone really, and from every student's point of view, having a look at those judgment grades and whether they're changing at all. Now this brings me to a point where I think it's really important to have a cross-checking going on here. And so this page for my students might be used by the pastoral team or your tutor team or your learning team, which are whose job it is to look horizontally across a year group. So I'm thinking here of my head of 6th, or my Raising Standards leader for Key Stage 4, or my head of Year 11, or whichever job title they have. I think it's absolutely paramount that they and their team are actually looking horizontally at students with that kind of picture in mind, to just cross-reference with subject staff on is that right? Is that a fair grade for that person? So let's close this, and with that in mind, I'm going to jump back home, and then I'm going to go into the student analysis area, okay? Because this is the view that would benefit those staff with horizontal kind of views across the year. So what am I seeing here? I've got my year 13s. They are in prior attainment order, and they've got all of their subjects across the page. And if we just take this first student here, the MEG for this student is A star A. And so the colors are indicative of how well they're performing towards that MEG. So you can see for this student that they're pink in chemistry and maths because they're being judged a grade A. And that's the lower of the 2 MEG grades. So it goes pink. In biology, they're being judged a B, which is 1 below, so they're going that blacky grey colour. For this student here, they've got an A star against that MEG, so that's red. So red is on or above MEG, pink is the lower of a split MEG, black is 1 below the MEG, and if I scroll down, this student here is 2 below. So what you don't want to see is blue. So talking about that blue, that's a chemistry blue. And remember, we had some concerns over our higher ability students in chemistry. So what I would be encouraging your pastoral teams to do is to look a sort of horizontal view across some of those subjects that there might be some concerns over a drop in progress. So let's click on chemistry, just click on the box and drag. So can you see, hopefully there's a blue box appears. If I drop it, then what I've done is I've filtered out my 37 chemists. So this is just their chemists, but it has got their other subjects there. So that hopefully negates you having to go into chemistry and click on every single student. You can see that picture here. You've also got the tutor groups. That doesn't have to be tutor group, by the way. That could be if you've got a bunch of pastoral, a big pastoral team that has responsibility for a group of students, 10, 20 students, then it can be that group. But that then becomes filterable if I just go here and add a filter then I can filter on that tutor group and I can just separate out the students that belong to me, in effect. Okay, so looking at my chemistry, I was concerned about these top students, and it feels to me that there are some there. So, for example, this student 272, who's getting A star star, and then this B in chemistry. So the cross-checking there would be for me as the tutor or head of sixth of tutor 7 to go to the chemistry department and say it feels that they're lower in chemistry than they are in their other subjects, which is possibly a different conversation that you'd have about this student here, because there's a bit more parity across their subjects, even though they're lower in grade. So again, I'm not suggesting that this results in artificial elevation of judgment grades, but it's just another avenue of questioning that might then strengthen some of the discussions that are going on, because you're coming at it from a slightly different angle here. If I want to remove that, then I just click and drag again, and then I'm back to my 193 students. Okay. Now, I can export this to Excel, by the way, and you would get this in an Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to, though, add a comparison group on. So I'd advocate that your pastoral teams do this. So compare edit, and we've got a group, a filter group called Student Performance Group. So if I'm just going to click on that, and then I'm going to apply that comparison. And what we'll hopefully see is that it's sorted it into categories, okay? And again, this is just another check. So who's above target in all subjects? So if I click on that, eventually it might, okay, that's not working. I'm going to scroll down until I get to it. Odd. That's a new thing. So bear with me while I scroll down to that group. And there we have them there. Above target in all subjects, so there's 33 students there. Now, is that what you're expecting? Are you expecting those 33 students to perform out of the box? Because if you are, then great. If you're not, then you might then want to go back to the drawing board with some of those grades to make sure that you've got accurate and fair and robust grades for all of those students. Okay, there are some other categories here, which if I hover over them, you can see, but the below target in all subjects would hopefully not be news to you, that you actually have been concerned and tracking, and they're on your highest risk group as you've been going through year 13. That click is just not wanting to work, folks. So I'll check that out when we come out of this webinar. You know, below target in any subject, that group of students there would have one subject where they were underperforming. Hopefully, as I'm scrolling down, there we go. So that group there is basically where your cross-checking is actually quite powerful, isn't it? Because you're actually picking out one subject where they're underperforming compared to the rest. And you know what? That may be valid. It may be entirely valid, but it's just a sort of checker at the end of the process. And then, you know, the same goes for key stage 4 and 5. We have got, if I just reset that, I'm not gonna add it because I've got a year 13 grade point on, but there's GCSE English Maths level 5+, and that might just help you with making sure that your sort of level 3s and your level 4s and 5s are all as you want them in English and Maths, and making sure that you've, you know, kind of factored in progression into sixth form courses as part of this process as well. Right, okay. So I'm going to go back to the subject area now because I want to do a little bit of a different kind of approach. That was not the subject area. There we go. Now, let's look at physics, because physics is in a very similar position to chemistry. They've been bouncing along on a grade 3. I know they got a grade 6 for the mocks, but the physics department seemed to have basically pounced on that mock grade, or it would seem around about that mock grade, to make their judgment grades. So similar situation to chemistry, where if we pop in and we click on the students and we sort by that prior attainment, again, we've got a little bit of, we're not getting A's up at the top end here. And so if this is totally unexpected for our physics department, then what we might start looking at is using this what if tool. Okay, so physics was a grade 3, remember. So if we're saying to the physics department, come on now, you know, you were a grade 3 and grade 6 seems a little bit pessimistic. What's it going to take to move us to a grade 4? So if you click on that 6 there and drag it, you can see it moving up and down the thermometer. I'm going to drop it on a 4. Okay, be realistic. So 8 students need to improve by a grade. So you can then talk to your physicists about, okay, so which 8 students here might make that difference. Now, I am not I've just popped that what if on, and I've got a what if column here and a double-edged thermometer. But before I start amending grades, I am not suggesting that you start just amending grades without any evidence to back it up. What I'm saying is that you were expecting the physics department to be higher in terms of progress, that your expert knowledge of the physics department over the last year, 2 years, 3 years has been that they are stronger than a grade 6. Then is the time to start doing this kind of exercise and actually saying to your physics department, right, come on now. This student here, for example, 234, are they really a C grade student? Can we look at any evidence to suggest that actually that student is being unfairly graded with a grade C? And if the answer is yes, and if the physics department has been strong in the past, then you're going to find some students where the answer has presumably got to be yes, that you're actually modeling what that might look like. So let's say the physics department say, actually, yeah, that's a bit harsh, that's actually should be a B. That should be a B. So we're not, you know, going over the top. We're just saying, yeah, that's a B, that's a C. So you'll just see what's happening to my thermometer here as I'm modeling these grades, and clearly I'm being very haphazard here. But you can see that as I move some of these grades up, I'm just guessing now, that actually that starts to look more like the physics department that you know and love. And you're not picking kids just for the heck of it. You're actually using evidence to back up these thumbs up decisions. Now you can save that what if, but what I would then suggest that you might do is, once your teachers have all done this process of quality assuring and asking all the in-depth questions about those draft 1 judgment grades, that you can then get your teachers to resubmit that what if modeling into your MIS. And then there's nothing to stop you then putting a second or a final judgment grade column back into Connect, so that you can look at the whole thing as a draft and then as a final. So I hope that makes sense. It does mean that your staff will have to re-import into the MIS, into your workbooks or your templates in MIS, but I would advocate that might be a good thing for you to have a look at, draft 1 and then final. So I hope that makes sense with physics. And as I say, I am not suggesting that you artificially elevate grades. It's all done very controlled and very much in an evidence-based situation. Right, okay, so a couple of other areas to show you. I want to pop into the monitoring accuracy area now, because we're making a lot of judgment calls on how strong our departments are if we're going to do this kind of modelling. So how do we know how strong our departments are? So if I pop into the monitoring area now, the 2 grade points that I've got selected, I've got their January predict and the judgment grade up there. And what I can see is the difference between the ALP scores between those 2 grade points. But last week, what we added, because it might again be another little bit of information that's of use to you, we added, and if I just hover over that, you can read that. We added the ability for you to be able to see the numbers sitting behind those 2 grade points. And so what that column there is showing you is how many students had a different grade between January and this judgment grade. And in chemistry there, 60% of them did, so 21 of them did, and it looks like they were all lower from the change. But actually, if you look at biology is a good example, the grade hasn't changed very much between the two, but actually pretty much half of the students have got a different grade. So I'm probably opening a whole can of worms here, but that's another, I would be concerned about that. And I would be talking to my biologists about exactly why that is the case, or just wanting some more information about why that's the case. And if I scroll down to sociology here, for example, whoa, you know, that's a grade per student at 0.24. So 26, so 3/4 of my students have gone, by the looks of it, up. And so again, another conversation with the sociology department to say, really, is that fair? Is that, you know, is that based on good evidence? So slightly different conversation. Now, what I'd advocate at this point is if you have, and if you've been with ALPS for a while, you'll have this to hand, but if you're not, then you might want to add, that's why I said at the beginning, you might want to add last year's outcomes. I'm going to just change my grade points just a wee bit. So I'm going to click on the grade point selector, and I'm just going to delete a couple of grade points, the comparison ones, and I'm going to replace the MP2 with an exam result. Okay, so I'm just now, I've got 2018-19 and the judgment grades. Okay, so what's happened here? The column's gone, by the way, because it's a different cohort of students, so it's not a viable to do the number of student grades different, because they're different students. But what it is doing, it's allowing me to say, for example, of the physics department, is it viable to say that the physics department grade of a 6 is actually doing themselves down? And it would appear that last summer they got a grade 4, and it would appear that it is viable to say it's a pessimistic progress outcome for them. And obviously, the longer you've been in a school and the longer you're doing this sorts of thing, then the more the more you understand of how your staff are predicting over time, and the more expertise you have in knowing where subjects are going to kind of come out in terms of ALPS progress values. English there we talked about actually did get a 7 last year, so it's possibly not viable. Sorry, it's possibly not valid to do a what if on the English department students and start elevating their grades, because that actually might be the final grade that you'd expect them to get. Chemistry actually had a grade 6 last summer. So again, that may not, all those top students who were targeted to get A's and who haven't gotten the A, actually maybe that's valid. That brings a whole raft of different priorities for your chemistry department in next academic year, but that's not the purpose of this next month or so, is it? So hopefully that just gives you a little bit more of a feel of where people have been in the past. You could do a judgment, sorry, a monitoring comparison between this summer results and what the staff were predicting just prior to those. So you can manipulate these two columns in any way you want to understand the accuracy of predicting of your staff, and to therefore make judgment calls on how they're predicting these judgment grades are going to look. So I hope that all makes sense. It's a really powerful area. Don't not go there. In other words, go there and make sure that you've got all of the data interconnect interactive that's going to help you make these overarching kind of judgments on your predicting accuracy. I've got one other area to show you, and I'm going to go home to do that. I'm going to retain the two grade points that I've put on there as I walk into the strategic page, and I'm just going to build an A-level report. Just select that report and create it. So what you can see here is I've still got that last summer and the judgment grade. Now let's hop forward a few weeks in time and say that this now, I'm a member of SLT, and I'm now looking at this strategic area with last summer's results, which are fixed, and my judgment grades, which is now the final draft. Okay, this is what I've done all my conversations in the background. I've done all my modeling. I've resubmitted the final judgment grade. This is what I'm saying is the nub of it. That's what I'm going to submit. So I guess it's just a final checker. Now, there's lots of pages in this report, and I'm just going to point out a couple of them that might be of use to you in this final bit of quality assurance. Okay. And the first one I'd be looking at is this quality indicator score, and that's pertinent to Key Stage 4 as well. And so you've got a grade 4 from last summer, and it's a grade 4 now. So I'm not suggesting for a minute, by the way, that you're not going to see a change in that over time. So you could be on track to get a 2 from a 4 last year. But it's just a checker for you to say, are we having a bumper year, and is that 2? If it is a 2, is that valid? Can we back that up? So again, that's just a checker to say, where have we been and where are we going? There is an A-level on target score there, by the way, which also for similar reasons might be worth just looking at. So that's your sort of progression over time. The other page that I might just look at, we've done the subjects in a different format. I would pop to the raw results. So the raw results page is achievement, yes, but it's basically that's the spread of grades. That's if that came out of your MIS on results day, would you recognize yourselves in that spread? And it's got some totaling here of different grade boundaries. Same at GCSE, you've got some summing up of grade ranges. And I know that a lot of you at Key Stage 5 have sort of A star to B as a target, and 60%. Does that feel right? Is that what you feel like you're on course for? And so again, it's just another checker of, there's the totals in the bottom, and that's your range. A stars, 62 A's, etc., etc. Is that what you'd expect to see? Now, it may be that when you get your results published, you do all of this hard work, you submit your judgment grades with a rank, and it may be that this is not what comes out of your system on results day, in which case, we would then advocate very much putting your published grades into Connect. It would be part of next year's subscription, but put them into Connect, and I think it's as valid as ever to do that with these published grades, and then carry out pretty much sort of similar exercises to what I've shown you in this webinar, because you're going to have to deal with setting priorities for next year, and you're also going to have to deal with appeals, and all of that in a normal year we have plenty of work on our hands after results day. This year I suspect you're probably going to find you've got a lot more. Okay, so I hope all that makes sense, and just as my final sort of parting shot to you is a summing up, really, showing you all the new features that we've released, and really hope those are useful. If you like them, if you've got any more ideas, and looking at Connect in the next sort of year or two, then please do let us know. We're always interested in hearing your ideas and your feedback. Mentioned that if you're using it at one key stage and not the other, that it is available for you at both free of charge until the end of sort of June, July time. And so please do use it if it's of use to you, particularly in this period. And then after that, maybe looking at your worried about your 12s and your 10s, and start looking at them through Connect. We will be doing some more work on those, by the way, and do some webinars in due course on year 10 and year 12. So bear with us and keep your eyes open for that. Let's just get through the judgment grades first and then worry about that. The support page I've shown you, and that there are additional webinars. We are up and running still as a company. We are all working from home, but you can contact us in the usual way. So email us if you've got any questions. Our education team are happy to have a chat with you, or an email back and forth with you about questions that you might have. So please do let us help you if we can. And that just remains for me to say, I'm going to leave the webinar running for a little bit in case there's any questions that John's still working on. Listen, it's a tough time for you. I don't envy what you're having to do in the next month before you submit these grades. Best of luck with those, and also, you know, keeping your other year groups learning. Do stay safe, please. Thanks very much. Bye now.
So